That was the week for April the 15th, Friday, April the 15th. A really interesting week in the world. Lots of battles going on. Fortunately, we're not going to talk about battles in Ukraine. We're going to talk about battles closer to home. The battle, Keith, for Twitter, or at least that's how you phrased it. The battle for Twitter. Is it a war? And who's on what side? Of course, Elon Musk is intimately involved in this battle, this war for Twitter.
You know, it's kind of interesting because it's highly politicized. Most people assume, and Musk went on the record and said he doesn't care about the financial, part of this. Most commentators are saying this is about politics, and basically you've got the old left, one defending the publicly traded capitalist board of Twitter in its current incarnation.
Who are the old left?
I can't really even name names. It's almost everyone, I think.
Now you're sounding like a Fox commentator. You can't talk about the old left, Keith, unless you can actually identify who they are.
Well, one of them is quoted in my editorial. It's
what's that name?
Thomas O'Connor.
But why is he left? Why is he just not? What's left about him?
He's basically, he's basically, what's left is the belief that Musk is going to reverse the banning of Donald Trump, which is really just a symbolic focal point.
Well, why is that left?
Open up free speech. And it's left because the left have got the reputation, I think it's well earned now, of being the leaders of cancel culture, which is the best way to fight a bad idea is to ban it. So Musk is on the side of the best way to fight a bad idea is to argue with it.
But I don't think that's fair. What you're doing is creating these straw men. I mean, I'm not entirely sure what Musk is up to, but the fact that he says he's doing this in the name of free speech doesn't mean that everyone who is opposed to him is against free speech. That's what you're arguing.
Well, in my wide circle of friends, I will say I think I'm the only one that thinks that Trump is on the right side of this. Most of my friends.
But what's Trump? I don't understand what Trump's got to do with it.
Well, Trump has a lifetime permanent ban from Twitter, and most of my friends, I don't want to name names because it's private.
Well, I'm your friend, and I don't believe that Trump should be banned, and I'm on the left. So
many of my friends don't want Musk to take over Twitter because they believe he will reverse the ban on Trump, and
well, that's I don't buy that either. I mean, I'm on the left. I'm your friend, and I think Trump should be on Twitter. So,
well, you're on what I would call the you're on the Renaissance Enlightenment left. So you actually believe in free speech, but you must haven't you noticed, Andrew? Let me just ask you: have you noticed that there are many people on the left that don't believe in free speech anymore?
I think that's true, although particularly in America, and I'm not sure if they ever believe, but there's just as many on the right, probably more on the right than on the left.
I think in the long run, it would be an entirely right-wing thing. If you look at the front page of my newsletter this week, this is a left-wing march for free speech.
This is in Berkeley.
Yeah, and historically, it's the left that have supported free speech. And we are in a very, very weird moment in history when, David Sacks, Elon Musk, and the like are assumed to be of the right. They're libertarians. I actually don't think they are right-wing, but it's widely assumed they're on the right. And that the right is the defenders of free speech is never really happened before that I can think of. Can you think of anything in history where that happened?
But I don't think I believe this is true. I just don't buy it. I mean, firstly,
are you accusing me of fake news?
I'm accusing you of being someone who used to be a leftist and now is arguing that everyone else has moved except for you, and that you're still a leftist even if you don't agree with anything that anyone says on the left anymore. And I don't know this thing with Trump and Musk. I mean, do you think? I mean, and maybe you're right. Is the subtext then of Trump's interest in Twitter putting Trump back on Twitter? He never says. He doesn't say that. I don't think he cares one way or the other about Trump, does he?
Well, he doesn't focus on Trump. What he exactly does say, and this is really important, he says anything that's legal should be allowed.
Yeah, I agree.
And then, you know, what is legal and what is illegal, I believe he makes a mistake. He says that Twitter should become the arbiter of that. I actually go even one step further. I think the law itself has to act. So if the police want to arrest someone, they can, but it's not Twitter's job to decide that up front. So if somebody should be allowed to publish something illegal, and then you leave it to the law to deal with them, not Twitter.
So, okay, so I don't disagree with that either. Why does Musk want to buy Twitter?
He said a lot of things in the last week.
And actually, let me even push it back further. Does he want to buy it, or does he really want to buy it, or is this a game?
I think he's been pushed into wanting to buy it by what happened when he tried to buy a small piece of it and join the board. Was that the existing power structures in Twitter, which is the board and the CEO, basically tried to manage him. They said, okay, we're going to do an all hands meeting and you can speak to it, and we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And Trump suddenly felt put in a box. And so
Trump or Musk?
Sorry, Musk. And then over the weekend, he said, okay, I'm not going to join the board, because he realized that was going to tie him in knots. And he then subsequently went to make an offer to buy the whole of Twitter. Now, if you listen to what he said on the record and assume that he's telling the truth, he said that he thinks Twitter's potential is far greater than can be realized under the current structure. And I kind of agree with that. I mean, Twitter to me is phenomenal, and credit to everyone that's been involved in it in the past for that being true. But it has become the world's wire service stroke. It's a two-way wire service, you know, where you can react to the news as well. And it is kind of amazing just technically what it is. And it's global. It's the least impacted by bans in places like Russia and China as well, interestingly enough.
But he said, I watched the TED interview, he said he didn't care about the business side. So yeah. I don't even know why. Is he doing it? Do you think he's genuinely doing it because he cares about free speech, or is he doing it because he wants his own soapbox? Is he doing it because he fears he's going to get banned?
Well, obviously, we'd have to be him to know. But
I
believe he really believes in free speech, and he's part of a group of people. I watched the All In podcast that David Sachs is on, and last week I put David Sachs in my newsletter, his video. I think there's a bunch of people that believe the internet has suddenly become, self-censored at the behest of the government or other voices, and is no longer a free and open space it was originally intended to be. Now, there are other people. The CEO of Reddit, one of the founders of Reddit today went on the record and said how naive that point of view is, because the internet has moved past the free speech era, because there are so many bad actors now that you can't have free speech. If you do, it would be, like allowing the worst points of view on the planet. I disagree with him, but he's younger than Musk and Musk's friend.
Who is it? Which?
I forgot his name. I'll try and find it, and I'll put it in the newsletter, because it's happened since I made the newsletter. But it's a long Twitter thread. That's what it was. It was a long Twitter thread by this guy, basically all about free speech and how utopian it is to have free speech on the internet today, which means that you have to have a side, and the internet's only going to be valid for that side. So
but the classic internet response or startup response to Twitter, say, is okay. It's for better or worse. It's limiting free speech. It's disappointing me. I'm going to start my own. Why doesn't Musk just go off and start his own Twitter?
Well, because Twitter's got so many users buying.
Well, he did. I mean, you could have said they made that argument about the car industry. Oh, I'm not going to start my own car business. The car industry already controls the world. It's unthinkable that I can compete. And he has. I mean, he's a remarkable man in that sense. So I don't know why he wants to buy something that's kind of old and a bit wonky.
No, I think if Twitter didn't have the essential characteristics of the platform he imagines, he probably wouldn't buy it. But he thinks it's pretty much ready-made, got all the right features. It's just being run badly.
It's a weird thing, though, to want to buy something that's, as you say, is already fully baked.
Yeah.
How old is Twitter? It's about 15 years old. I don't agree with you. I think it's really boring. I think it's boring as a platform. I think it's boring to use. But maybe that's my problem.
You use it.
I never use it.
You do. Your show goes out live and everything.
I know, but that's automated. I'm never on it myself.
Yeah, but you had to type in some stuff to make it.
No, I don't. Somebody, it just goes out automatically.
Oh, you're not in control of your own feed.
No.
There you go.
I have a look at it. I mean, it's annoying.
Well, if you imagine the world without Twitter, Dave Weiner this week said an amazing thing. He said, in my lifetime, when I was born, I used to have to mimeograph leaflets to hand out at campus. And he said, just look how far the world's come from mimeograph to today in my lifetime.
Yeah.
It's kind of amazing when you think about how...
Oh yeah, I agree. I mean, I think Twitter was amazing. I think it was amazing for a few years, and then it just I think it's boring. And I also think whether or not it's formally censored, it's self-centered. Everybody gravitates to their own echo chamber. So
everyone's self-centered.
Even if whether or not Trump or Musk or Keith Tier is banned, if you don't hear what you don't want to hear. So I don't really see any difference, what difference it makes whether or not people are formally banned.
I'm going to leave the audience to reflect on your point of view and decide which of us they agree with. But I'm on the other side of that. I think the world needs technology that lets us engage with each other, learn the.
I'm not arguing against that.
Yeah, but then once you've got that, you're going to have dissenting points of view, sometimes quite.
Well, coming back to our Web3, our endless Web3 conversation, which is interesting, is if there was a genuine manifestation of a sort of a peer-to-peer DAO style Twitter, that would be really interesting. I don't know if it's possible or conceivable.
Yeah.
But if I was Musk or if I was a startup entrepreneur, I'd be much more focused on that than complaining.
Well, that is one of the other things he said, is that in order to do that, you have to take it private first, because the investors will never let you turn off the advertising.
Well, he's right, because you're taking all the value out. But then why take it? Why buy it and then reinvent it when you could just do your own thing?
I think the appropriate response to that might be watch this space, because he's definitely not going to be able to buy Twitter, that's for sure.
And no one could be doing. I mean, if Twitter could invent a narrative, this is it. I mean, it's as if almost they're paying him, because I never gave Twitter much thought. Now everyone's thinking about it. It's all over the news. Twitter.
Yeah, and remember, before he bought his 9%, Twitter shares were in the $30 range.
What are they now?
They're about 45-ish now, and he's offering 54. Yeah. So it's a brave board with shareholder lawsuits being prolific in America. It's a brave board that says no to this, and they have said no.
Yeah, I wonder who's in charge of litigation at Twitter. Do you know?
I do not know, but it's probably Wilson Sonsini who are rubbing their hands together at the money they're going to make defending Twitter's board.
Well, they must have an officer, a chief litigation officer.
They probably do. And there'll be directors and officers insurance, which means the insurance companies are going to pay for this.
Okay, well, that's Twitter. That's Musk. I have to say, to me, it's a storm in a teacup. But maybe I'm wrong.
Read my editorial and decide for yourself.
Yeah, I have read your editorial. I think you're wrong on that, because I just think you're paranoid about the old left being intolerant, which maybe you're right, but they're no more intolerant than the conservatives. Certainly, making leftists more intolerant than conservatives is wrong, I think. I mean, they're equally intolerant.
Well, I am no friend of the actual right. So if I support free speech, you can make the assumption it's nothing to do with being right wing. And the fact that many of my friends who are self-identify as being left.
Who are these self-identifying left friends? Give me some names, Keith.
I can't that would be cruel to them and not fair. They can speak for themselves, but just take my word for it, it's all of them.
All of them?
They're all
in your leftist enclave of Palo Alto, right?
Exactly.
In your $10 million homes.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, well, what else? Anything else interesting happening this week? I assume that the world still goes on beyond Elon Musk.
Yeah, there's a nice section called All Change for Ethereum, where Naval Ravikant, who's the founder of AngelList, interviews Vitalik Buterin, who's the founder of Ethereum. And it's all about the next version of Ethereum, which is known as Ethereum 2.
Ooh, that is an original title.
Original title. And basically, the big critique of Ethereum is that it costs you so much to send money that you can't afford to do it. Therefore, it isn't worth using. And they're fixing that. So you've got two podcasts, part 1 and part 2, well named, where basically Buterin goes on the record and talks about what's changing with Ethereum. And that links to an article which says cryptocurrency, as you know, is going to be upended. There's lots of elements to this, but the thing that most of us are going to care about is that it gives rise to software that will allow you to make very large interest gains on savings without paying a lot of money to do so. And you're now starting to see something called yield farming produce outcomes where you get better than 100% interest per year.
Yeah. You want to buy some land in Florida, Keith?
Exactly.
I got a whole lot of land you can buy.
I've got an NFT.
Yeah, exactly. Did you see what happened with Dorsey's NFT?
I did. It's a sign of the times, isn't it? So Dorsey's...
And you a few months ago, you were telling me how NFTs were the future. This idea of yield is just absurd. Well, no one ever pays anyone 100% on capital. It's just unthinkable and unheard of, and it won't happen. It might happen for a week or two, but then it will collapse. I guarantee it.
Yeah, we'll see. But NFTs are the future. It's just that, like with art,
some are more equal than others, right?
Yeah, it's the same with art. Be careful.
So what happened with the Dorsey one? I mean, surely I would pay $100 for it. Why is it not worth more than $100?
So it was originally sold for 12 million, if I'm not mistaken, some amount. It's the first ever tweet.
Yeah, which to me is enormously valuable. It is the perfect manifestation of an NFT, of its value.
Yes. Andrew, we're live here on the air, and one of my sons has come in the room. He's going to have to understand that we're live on the air, and this show has to finish first. Thank you. So, what was I saying? NFTs. Yeah. No, look, I agree with you that it should be valuable. It should be valuable. You're right. And the fact
you and I would pay $150 for it.
I actually think that the best NFTs are original digital documents, and a tweet probably is one of those, but it wouldn't be high on my list.
But you wouldn't pay $150 for that?
Well, the thing is, Twitter's kind of ephemeral, isn't it? It just goes and it's gone. But I'd probably pay a lot of money for Jeff Bezos's first PowerPoint deck that he pitched to Kleiner Perkins.
Well, I'm happy with Jack Dorsey's tweet. I mean, we'll come back to this in future shows. This idea that you can earn 100% is, you can come up with all sorts of explanations of why it makes sense, but you're never going to convince me of that one.
So this is the one that people you got to go and look at. Examine this one. It's called Rocket Pool, rocketpool.net. And if we go to their service and you look at what you can do, oh, that's actually the wrong one. Is this it? I can't find where it is, but basically they list all the rewards. These ones are like 6%.
Well, 6% isn't 100%.
No, but I actually can't find the right thing to click on. I wish I could.
Trust me, everyone, this is a Ponzi scheme. It's not Keith's, somebody else's. Rocket, what's it called? Rocket Pool?
Rocket Pool.
Are they connected with Liverpool?
Now, if you look at it, it's called staking. 163,000 Ethernet stakes. You got to multiply that by 3,000 to get the dollar value. So that's 3 times 300, 480, $500 million by 1,000 different node operators, and you
Well,
can.
I'm putting my money into Jack Dorsey's tweets, the NFT, not Liverpool. Is that connected with Liverpool Football Club, Keith? This
No.
Rocket Pool?
No,
Not at all. Is this not just the anger of a disgruntled Manchester United fan trying to get Liverpool fans to lose all their money? Most of them are poor anyway, right?
They are. I found what I was looking for. Let's just to show I'm not totally stupid. This is Aperture, and this is the APRs you can get from doing various things. So if I click on one of them, that's 73% APR, and it's tied to Ethereum. This is tied to Google stock. It's 31%. This is different ones are tied to different things. The top performing one is 73% right now.
Well, this hysteria over Web3 will climax, and I'm guessing it will climax in something like this, which is so self-evidently absurd and fraudulent that we'll see. What about the essay of the week, Keith? Let's get beyond. I mean, I don't think Web3 is fraudulent. I just think this idea of telling people that they can make 100% of their capital is absurd. What about essay of the week?
The essay of the week is kind of interesting. It's about it's called The State of Globalization in 2022. It is come from the Harvard Business Review. I think if I click on it, we can go to the article. It's Stephen Altman and Caroline Bastian. And what it talks about is the return of globalization after the pandemic. So this graph kind of speaks to this is merchandise trade volume versus December 2019, and you can see that basically cross-border world trade has started to go back up. Global foreign direct investment has started to go back up. So
even post Ukraine.
Yeah, and this is growth of internet. Not post Ukraine. This only goes up to 2021. Sorry. So basically, globalization is kicking back in. People flows declined a lot, as you'd imagine, and the trend is back up. So you can see it's a fairly comprehensive article about lots of different manifestations of globalization. And it's really, really, whether you agree with it or disagree with it, it's based on.
Yeah, well, that makes more sense. Yeah, I never thought. I think one of my predictions is that in 5 or 10 years, the COVID 2 years are going to be more of a footnote than a chapter in the section on the 2020s. I think we're going to forget fairly quickly, and I'm not sure how much really changed.
Yeah.
What do you think from a technology point of view, what is the most important event of the COVID 2 years, which is pretty much finished now, from say April 2020 to April 2022?
I think RNA vaccine discovery is probably the biggest breakthrough, because I think it'll be applied to lots of other things as well.
Well, what about the startup of the week? I gave you a good segue and you missed that one.
I didn't want to interrupt your flow, but the startup of the week is FIFA Plus, which is FIFA's new streaming service. And the headline is, it could be the first step to cutting out broadcasters. And
Ooh.
so this is the service here. It's basically, if I accept, it's basically a streaming, mainly documentary service right now. But the idea is, over time, they're going to retain the rights to games. They've already got replays of old FA Cup finals where they have the rights. The question is, how long will it be before they no longer sell the rights to broadcasters, but own the audience themselves? And I think the answer is as fast as possible, because the value of sports and the audience for sports, especially mass sports like soccer, is so big that it doesn't make a lot of sense for the game to gift it to broadcasters and let them keep all the money via advertising.
But this would require an agreement around the world. I mean, FIFA is not exactly the most transparent or respected organization. I mean, they're the ones who made the decision to have the World Cup in Qatar.
Yeah, well, their structures would obviously dominate, and they have let's call it a FIFA parliament, where everyone goes and votes on stuff at regular intervals. And so they have the means and the method to vote on doing something at the right time. I think it's going to be a financial calculation. When would the subscription revenue from fans watching games be more than the revenue?
Yeah, and I'm guessing, and this is the great tension in football, international and domestic, the battles, using a word you used earlier on over Twitter, the battles between the wealthy and the poor clubs, the disappearance of the middle. So I'm wondering whether this FIFA.com idea, would it benefit the smaller clubs or the bigger clubs? Is it better for Real Madrid than, small Altrincham from England?
Well, right now, FIFA only really governs internationals. So clubs would be not part of this. It would be national teams. And
no one watches international football anyway.
Well, they do on occasion, the World Cup being the best example. But, what would happen here is that, England can only play English players and Holland can only play Dutch players. So money's not going to change the quality of the teams, really. Yeah. So that would mean FIFA's pitch. If I was running FIFA, I'd say the pitch is this. Let me sell the games. I'll give each national team the amount of money justified by its audience. And then the rest I will pump into grants at all levels of the game to help the whole game.
I think, if this happens in the next 25 years, I would be astonished, given the bureaucracy, the slow-moving nature, the political nature of the game. Yeah. And I'm not sure there's any need for it. I mean, the clubs work well with broadcasters of one kind. I mean, I can imagine Apple or Amazon buying the rights to show, or YouTube buying the rights to show the games. That's another issue.
Well, that already happened with baseball, with Apple last Friday doing the very first Friday night baseball streams on Apple TV Plus. And I do agree with you, that is going to happen. But one step beyond that is when the sports themselves, if you do the math on any of the big teams and their global fan base, and you figure out even as low a price on average as $1 a game, the amount of money that would flow to the teams is so much more than currently the broadcasters pay.
But, I think, and this comes back to one of the themes you and I argue about, is the globalization, the end of the nation state. One of the reasons why football remains so valuable is because of the national leagues. It's the only reason. The international game's really boring. No one really watches. I think that the Qatar World Cup this year will be the equivalent of the Oscars. It'll be such a farce. So,
but what about
with football? You have the simultaneous growth of globalization with really strong national leagues.
You do, but the best national leagues have become global products.
Right. No, I agree. That's what I just said.
Yeah. So
But they wouldn't be global products if they weren't strong national leagues.
Well, so what you've got is the market is global, but the structure is local. And so it's the market that everyone cares about here when they talk about globalization. No one's going to try to create, World United, but Manchester United on a global market is very valuable, even when it's as bad as it is today as a team.
They're not good, Manchester United. I think they're still favourites for fourth spot, aren't they?
Not even close.
No.
No,
they got a new manager.
And Andrew's being cheeky because he knows that his team is favourites for fourth spot.
They're favourites, but it means nothing. You were favourites 2 weeks ago. All we need to do is lose our next 2 or 3 games. It's quite conceivable.
Yeah, it is not inconceivable, that's for sure. Chelsea, however, made a big rebound. Did you see them? They're having lost quite heavily. They then won 3 games in a row.
Yeah. Why doesn't Musk just go off and buy Chelsea rather than annoy us with Twitter? You could have more fun with Chelsea, couldn't he?
Not if you're him. Remember, he's a tech geek. He's not a sports fanatic.
Yeah. Finally, Keith, let's go back to the great man himself. Tweet of the week.
I made an offer. It's
pretty cool. I mean, he is a geek, but that's a good tweet.
Yeah.
How much is that worth as an NFT if he actually ends up buying it? That would be the bookend with the Jack Dorsey one.
It would. I've actually clicked on the link and it isn't.
It doesn't go anywhere.
It doesn't go anywhere. So maybe he didn't make an offer. Yep. So that brings us full circle, Andrew, to my prediction is a week from now, he will not have bought Twitter, but there'll be some other angle that we're talking about.
I agree. And I don't think he probably has any interest. He is a smart guy, so he's clearly doing something smart. And somehow he will win because he always seems to win.
And the free world will win.
Oh, except the leftists, Keith. What about the leftists?
Well, they're not in the free world anymore. They want a captured world.
Okay, well, that was the week for April the 15th. We will be back with the newly conservative Keith Teare next week, talking about the decline of Western civilization and why the left has given up on free speech. So, Keith, have a good week, and I'll talk to you in a week.
You certainly will, and I'll sit on the left as I am today.